And the next privacy tort that we're going to look at is false light, and we're going to see how that applies. So what is it? Basically, it's the publication of material that puts someone in a false light. And that false light has to be offensive to a reasonable person. And we also have to see that the publisher was at fault. Now, you may notice there's some similarities here to something else that we're talking about, and that's a libel. So let's take a look at how it's similar and how it might be different. So the way that it's similar to libel is both of them involve publishing something that is derogatory about someone. However, in false light, the words do not have to be significant enough to defame them. When we're looking at things, small errors in detail don't necessarily matter. The truth really is substantially a protection for you, as it is in libel. But you can get into trouble by kind of misconstruing things. So misuse of a photo or a video is often a false light issue. So if you are doing a story on alcoholism and you run a picture of this cat with his beer, and the cat may, obviously it was a person, they could sue you if this person was not an alcoholic and they felt that you represented them as such by illustrating them, but just using them as illustration for a story, then you're going to get into some trouble. So this is very often where we see this come up. Here's a case where a woman's photograph was broadcast on TV, and it was accompanying the narration about 20 million Americans who have herpes and the fact that it is incurable. She did not have herpes, and she was proven to have a valid false light claim because viewers of this newscast would have certainly thought that she might. And really, let's think about what's highly offensive. So, this case that I've given you here of Sabenko versus Worth Publishers, a Port Authority police officer said there was a defamatory picture of him that was in a textbook, and it talked about the interaction of a white police officer with an African-American suspect. He's prodding him with his nightstick, and it was this particular officer. And actually what the court found here is there was nothing highly offensive about the photo or the caption. It was very matter of fact, and even though the officer may have felt people could take offense, there was no evidence that that was going to take place. Now, one of the most famous false light cases that we have is this one, Time Incorporated versus Hill. We had the circumstance of 3 convicts who took the Hill family hostage in an area outside of Philadelphia. They ended up keeping them for 19 hours. According to the Hill family, they were actually treated fairly well by these suspects who ended up being killed by police. There was a novel that was published about it, and then that was subsequently made into a play. Now, Life magazine, which was owned by Time, actually printed an article about the play. There were a lot of inaccuracies in the play as it related to the Hill family. So what the Hill family ended up doing was seeking damages against Life because the article repeated those inaccuracies. But in this case, the court found that Time was not liable for this because there was no reckless disregard for the truth. It wasn't like they set out to harm the reputation of the Hills. They were simply reporting on the play. Now, that was not the case in this particular case, Cantrell versus Forest City Publishing. The picture that we have here is Joe Esterhaus. You may recognize his name. He was actually the screenwriter on movies like Basic Instinct. But before he did that, he was a reporter for the Cleveland Plain Dealer, and he reported on a bridge collapse that killed someone, including this gentleman, Melvin Cantrell. He went to photograph the Cantrell house. He took images. The article stressed the family's poverty. It really kind of put them in a bad light. He said that the wife Mr. Cantrell wouldn't speak. She actually wasn't home. And in this case, the Supreme Court upheld the jury verdict for the Cantrell family, saying that the newspaper had acted with a reckless disregard for the truth to put her in a false light.